Hello everybody, welcome to Gregg's Vintage Workshop, where I'm working to restore history one piece at a time. Tonight we're going to be looking at part 2 of the Philco 42340 radio that I'm redoing for my wife's nephew. In part 1 we took a look at the cabinet and what great shape it was in, the chassis, how clean it looked, and kind of a general quick overview of it. In part 2 I find out that it is not as great as what it originally appeared that it was. It has been worked on by somebody else. There are some changes made in there that I'm going to try and get back to the way they were to an extent. And so I will be working on the audio output section of the radio first. If you're looking at the schematic, it will be the items on the right hand side. So without further ado, let's take a look at this. You'll see the things that I found and the progress I've made thus far. Okay, we're going to go ahead and restuff this bakelite block right here. This is the capacitor that basically has the 2.01 microfarad caps to ground, from line to ground and from neutral to ground. We're going to use the Y2 caps on that. I had those in stock. I'm still waiting on my order from Sal. He did send it, actually shipped it yesterday. So these are the 0.01 microfarad Y2 caps. Now what I'm planning on doing is using a couple tools that make this job a super easy job that I purchased from Steve, I want to say Steve Johnson, over on the Philco radio forum. He was selling these tools at one point in time, and I'll demonstrate the tools when we get the bakelite block off. But this is the pushing tool that we basically use to push the tar block with the caps straight out of the little block. And this is a little screwdriver that we use to sever the leads of the existing caps to do that. But the first thing I want to do is, it looks like this one has had some work on it before, where they've really soldered the living daylights out of these passages where the leads come up through there. So I'm going to get some solder wick, and we're going to see if we can pull some of that solder out of there, and then we'll get to restuffing it. Okay, so here's the tools that I was showing you earlier. And the idea behind this is you just take the drill. You got the leads that come up through the cap, through the block terminals here from the caps, and we're just going to use the drill to turn it lightly, and that'll basically sever the leads. So now the leads are severed. And then the next step is I'm going to take and I'm going to heat this up, the block, with my heat gun. And then we'll just take this and insert it right through the center hole and push that right out. So let me get my heat gun and we'll do that. Okay, so I got the block here. We're going to heat it up quickly. It won't take a whole lot of heat. Nor do we want to put a whole lot of heat. We'll just put this right in the center like this, and I get a grasp on this, and just push it out. And I don't know if you guys saw that, but it popped it out. Basically, a big piece of it right here. Okay, since we only come out in the one chunk, we're going to go ahead and do this chunk get a little hotter this time. And do it again. And push it right out that time, see? In one chunk. And the caps will pull right out like that. And like that. And it pretty much usually leaves this nice and clean in here. If you guys are seeing that, there's just a little bit of light tar in there. It usually comes out in one piece. Of course, when I'm trying to record it, it won't come out in one piece. But I think I didn't quite have enough heat on it. Had I had more heat on it, it would have come out better. But as you can see, it comes out nice and clean. You have a lot less to mess around with. I'll go ahead and get the rest of this cap material out of here, which, because they had so much solder down inside these where they don't usually have that, and I didn't get that all out with the solder wick. That's why everything's still in here. But let me get those pieces that are left in there out, and we'll come back. Okay, so I got that all cleaned up. You see, I got all the solder off. I cleaned it all up really well, inside and outside. It's like a new block already. So now all I got to do is get my caps in there. My two Y caps. One will be going from line to ground, and the other one will be going from neutral to ground, which in this particular case, this terminal here is going to be the ground terminal. So let me cram these in and I'll show you what we get. Okay, there's the caps in there. I haven't soldered it yet, but the reason I haven't soldered it yet was I wanted to show you this. So the one cap is going down into the terminal on the end here and had to go all the way over to this side over here to the ground. And I didn't want a chance at making contact with this other one here going into the center terminal and over to the ground, so I put some yellow heat shrink on it. That'll shrink once I solder it, get some heat into it. But the reason I didn't solder them yet is because I want to show you this. When I was showing you guys earlier and saying how globble up it was and those holes were all full of solder, there's no reason for those holes to be filled with solder, because the actual wire lead wraps around these little posts right here. And that's the only place I'm planning on soldering, is right there. There won't be anything going into the holes, and there's no reason for there to be anything going in the holes. Once it's soldered onto those posts, it's common with all that right there. So each of those individual sections. So let me get that soldered up and we'll be back. Alright, there it is, all soldered up. And like I said, as you can see, everything is well soldered, but there's no solder in the holes. And typically you don't have solder in the holes because that doesn't usually happen. And it just made it a little bit harder for things to come out, but it worked out well. Now the other thing I did was, in the process of cleaning this block, I did rub off the actual identification number. So I went ahead and printed one off on my label maker and stuck it on there. This is a Philco 3903-ODG according to the parts pages, and so that's what I've put in here. They're actually, Philco makes a block page that shows all the various part number bakelite blocks and the size of the capacitors and where they go. So it's important to have that on there for people in the future. So I put it on there. This is ready to go back in. Okay, so I was getting ready to put my bakelite block back in there, and I was poking around and taking a look around, and I noticed that I do have some hard wires in there that I'm going to have to change out, and they're in the vicinity of where the bakelite cap goes. The first one's this orange wire right here, I touched it. As you can see, it's just flaking apart. This particular wire goes from this terminal 5 on this tube here. I believe it's a 7B5, but it is on the schematic. It is right here, this little wire right here. Doesn't look like much, but unfortunately it's going from here all the way over to the speaker down inside there and underneath, so that's got to come out. Now the one that also is attaching to it is this one right here. It runs all the way over here to the antenna jack. Now this one actually doesn't feel bad. It feels still somewhat rubbery, so I don't know that I'm going to have to change it or not. I'll look at it a little bit closer once I get this orange one out of there. And then I got this red one that doesn't feel bad, except right here it's split. So I think I'm going to have to replace that wire as well. And but the rest of them don't seem horrible. Once I get in here, I'll be able to tell a little bit more. I may have to change a couple more of them, but the orange one's definitely got to go. The blue one's a possibility. This red one's probably going to go. So I'll get these changed out. And then this switch, you can't see the shaft from the angle on which my camera is right now. See if I can lift this up a little bit, maybe you can see it. If you can see this, I don't know that this is the original switch. I don't think it is. Remember I told you it looked like it had something here and here? There's nothing there. I think this is one that somebody stuck in here because they had to modify the shaft. It's got a splice on here to get the shaft out to the length they need it to be. So I don't know that I'm going to mess with this switch and try and fix it. I may just buy me a rotary switch and put in there a new switch. I got to go online and see what I can find for it. But I think that that's probably going to not be reused. If I get one that has a long enough shaft, then it prevents me from having to use an extension, and I can use that for some other radio sometime maybe. But I think I'm going to get these wires changed out, see what I can find for this switch. Once I get these wires changed out, then I go ahead and put my bakelite block back in there, but there's no sense doing it in this congested area until I get those wires changed out. So I'm going to work on that. Okay, so I got some of these wires changed. I got the red wire here, got a new red wire, run from here over to here. That got disrupted when I changed the orange wire, which is this orange wire here that runs down to the speaker. I'm going to change this black wire here. It actually isn't rotten, but it has some wear on it right here, and I shortened it when I cut it, so I'm going to put a new wire here. The blue wire that was going over to the antenna terminal is actually still pretty supple, but it was sort of hard here, so I went ahead and cut out the hard section and put some heat shrink on it and put that back on. So I think we're in pretty good shape there. Now this switch, as I said before, I thought did not look original, and looking at the schematic, it's not original because, as I think I said in the very beginning on this thing, that this control I thought was supposed to be volume and tone, and it is. So if you guys can see here, this item 45 is actually the tone switch, and so this is supposed to be a combination on-off switch and tone switch. It's shown, the tone portion is shown here in 45, and this is the on-off switch portion here. So I'm going to have to get a new switch for this that will have tone control possibilities. I went online on eBay today and I ordered a switch that is a two-throw 3 position that I think will work for this, and I'm hoping it will. So that's the plan. This actually had an extension on it, as you guys saw earlier. I think I showed it to you right here, which I'll probably wind up having to reuse because the switch that I ordered didn't look like it has a very long shaft, so I'll probably have to reuse this. It doesn't get seen once it's in the radio, so it won't matter. But I'll get the new switch and we'll install that in here and wire that up properly in the circuit right here. So that's tying into, I can't see this very well because of my eyes, I'm too far away from this item 44 cap off of the 7B5 tube. So anyhow, we'll get that in there and we'll get that wired up. I'm still waiting for my order from Sal's, should be here this week. At that time I'll change this cap and the one I already pulled out, the two electrolytics. And I'm going to continue working on some of this wiring. Some of it, when you know from a distance, it doesn't look bad. This red one here is bad. That's got to go. It's hard as a rock, and I can see some wiring showing through there. So I've checked a couple of the resistors. This big one here is fine. Lies already in there. I checked that. And of course, all the paper caps are going to go. I was originally going to just power it up once I replace electrolytics, but obviously there's been some other work done in this thing, so I'm going to go through and we'll have to check the various coils in here, antenna coil and the shortwave coil, which is probably fine because it's pretty heavy coil. But yeah, so let me get a few more wires changed out and I'll check a couple of resistors and we'll come back. Alright, so I thought I'd show you guys what I've been doing. I've been working away in here, and one of the reasons I said I wasn't going to say it was going to be an easy restoration is because I knew I'd jinx it if I did. Well, as it turns out, practically all of the wiring is not great, and so I've been gradually replacing all of the rubber wiring with cloth covered wiring. So I've been mainly working in this section here, which is the output section, and when I've tested the resistors, I've gone through and highlighted the ones both on my sheet as well as on my schematic, showing the ones that are bad. I've got like several schematics running here of different sizes to make them easier to see. Let me see if I can find the one I'm working on the most. I've been working with this more exploded version, and as you see, I highlighted in yellow if I've tested a resistor and it's tested not great, and I've checked in green if they've checked okay. So that's why I've been doing this. What I want to show you here's the 12 microfarad electrolytic that was running across here. It's standing vertical here right now. And I did get my order from Sal's, and here's the one cap I've replaced there, and a couple of resistors I've changed already. These aren't soldered in place yet because I'm going to drop this third IF can out and probably either cover these wires or put new wiring on it. It's not testing good between the green wire here going to the cathode portion of the 7C6 between it and the blue down here. So I've got to figure out why. So I'm going to drop it out, figure that out, fix it, put the wiring in it. The other thing boy, I can talk. The other thing I've done is I found a new switch that I put in here. This is not an original switch. I did a lot of searching online to find a switch that I could use as both the on-off switch and the tone control. Somebody had eliminated the tone control. Apparently when the switch went bad, they put that other switch in there. They had eliminated this tone control, and they had run the plate cap right here. They had run it straight to ground versus going through this 0.006 microfarad cap here for the tone cap. So they had this, which I haven't changed yet. They had this cap going straight to the ground on the little block right here. Okay, So they had that going straight to ground. So what I did was I got this switch, and I've got it wired now so that one portion controls the on-off, the other portion controls the tone. So let me show you that switch and the way I've kind of got it wired. I had to jump a couple terminals together. It's a 2-throw, 3-position switch, and I've got, get this thing set up right. I've got these 2 black leads are for the switch, the on-off switch. And so with the switch all the way, you can't see my hand, but the switch is, if I can flip this up, you might see a little more. I don't know if you will or not. Anyway, it's off right now. Now it's on in the first position. That's the second position. It's still on. So the radio's on whether this switch is in the first or second position. Alright, now it's off. So now let's go to the tone control wires. No continuity with the switch off. No continuity in the on position. First position of on. Continuity in the second position of on. So that's when you're switching the tone on or off right there. Between just standard on or tone. So the switch should be good to go. And so now I'm just going to go ahead and get this block put in there that I redid. Alright, we're going to get that back in there, get the wires hooked back up. I'll get a new capacitor for that. That's an 02. I got 022 I'll put in there, and then 006. I think I got an 0067 I'm sticking in there. So we get that in, and we'll be back. Okay, let me show you what I got done here. I have basically finished this section right here, with the exception of pulling the volume pot out and cleaning it. But I got my safety cap back in there. I got all new cloth wiring in there. I got the volume and tone switch all connected. There's the 2 caps I was talking about previously. There's a 12 microfarad electrolytic, which is actually a 15 now. I've got a new polarized line cord from Sal's. I hooked it up, got my UL knot in there. I fused it. Probably going to put a 1.5 amp fuse in that. I've got a new resistor here that is not soldered yet, because I still have to put the 3rd IF wire back on there once I get that out and fix it. This yellow wire here I still have to hook up, and I'll do that, but I have a green rubber wire here I have to hook up, replace first with cloth wire. And I didn't want to tear too much into this until I finish this section here. So that's our next step. I'm going to go ahead and pull the pot out, clean it up. I did want to show you something that I found though. You see a hole here and a hole here. I believe that's where the field coil right here would have mounted. It was 1700 ohm field coil. Well, there's no field coil, as you can see. This power resistor was in here. Tracing the wiring back, I found that they had added, the reason that speaker looked pretty good was they had added a permanent magnet speaker, probably because the field coil had gone bad at some point, and they'd put a 2400 ohm power resistor in here. Well, I ordered a 1740 ohm power resistor, 20 watt, and the 20 watts way overkill, but it was very difficult trying to find a 10 watt in the ohmage that I wanted. So I decided I'd rather use overkill on the wattage and get closer to the ohms that I need to have. So I will mount that power resistor when I get it this next week in one of these holes. It's actually got 2 holes. It's a metal power resistor, so I'll mount that there. When I do that, I'll get rid of this. These are where the two 4 microfarad capacitors went, and they had it run over here. I'm going to just come off this terminal strip. There's the negative and the 2 positives. I'll just put a 4 from here to here and a 4 from here to here. Get rid of this power resistor. Run a wire from the new power resistor up here, and we'll be able to get that completed. It is a permanent magnet speaker. I checked it, so obviously it was changed at some point in time, and that's apparently why this one's missing. I've got resistors marked as being defective that I've checked that were out of tolerance. I'm going to do this section here next, and we'll replace these caps. We'll replace the defective resistors. That one's defective there. I've got it marked, and it's one of these over here on the schematic. I'm going to get that third IF can out, check it out better off the radio, replace the rubber wiring, and we'll get that back in place. And we'll finish up this section, and then we'll move into the last section here, which is going to be a lot more difficult because I've got the shortwave antenna here. But I think I will go ahead and get this volume pot cleaned up, make sure it's good. If not, I might have to order another one. And once I get that done, I'll go ahead and get this cap replaced and get this third IF out. But I think that this will make a good stopping point for part 2. I don't want to make this too long, these sections too long. So for part 2, I think we're going to end it here. In part 3, we'll move in to the next section. I'll show you guys this third IF. I'll test it, I'll wire it, and we'll move into this section here, and I'll have to pull the first IFs out probably and rewire them. Now this one's got a cloth wire coming out of it, 2 cloth wires coming out of it. It does have 2 rubbers. If they test okay, I may just sleeve them with some heat shrink, but this one's not testing good, so I may have to make repairs to it or change it out. So anyhow, let's go ahead and end part 2 here. So from Greg at Gregg's Vintage Workshop, thanks for watching.